And I know I should process what you just saw, but I don't want to delay this. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Brendan Fraser.
Hey everybody, how y'all doing? Need a hug? Hot cocoa. I brought my friend along. If you feel a little sad at the moment, no, you don't. I'm gonna give her back to her mom, I hope.
As if they didn't love you enough already. You bring a dog.
Never work with children or animals. Hi, thanks for being here.
Brendan, I feel like you've been in a lot of rooms like this since the Venice Film Festival back in August. I mean, a lot of walking onto a stage where people have just seen the movie and jump to their feet. I mean, what has this last few months been like? Because it's such an enormously powerful movie and such an undeniable performance, and you know, to get this reaction.
Rewarding. It seems like each audience who has just seen this film has gone through what we all hope and aspire for when we go to see a work of cinema, of art, a film, a story, a play. You go through a communal, I don't know, catharsis or something together where you feel something that maybe you don't even know why, but you do. And it changes you a little bit. And my hope is that maybe it changes the way that you thought about something before you walked in the door here today, and maybe it will reorient some pieces in your heart and your soul about how you think about them in the future. So the last couple of months have been rewarding for that. Brief, yeah.
Did the process of making it reorient pieces of your heart and soul?
Absolutely. I have an underlined, reiterated sense of empathy and I think an appreciation for the tolerance that we have the potential to show one another by having seen how this material is responded to by its audience. It's rewarding, for sure.
What was the initial approach? I mean, Darren Aronofsky saw you in something else in a trailer or something and decided you were his Charlie?
I think Darren hadn't seen much of anything that I had done, to tell you the truth. Outside of no, he said, no, I hadn't seen much of what Brendan did. He did catch, I think, he had sight of a part I did in a film in Brazil some time ago. I think because no one else saw that film, he was the first guy to see it. You'd have to ask him, but I think he had a piqued interest to, hey, he was looking for an actor, as he later told me, who was someone to whom audiences felt they already knew or hadn't seen for some time. And wanted to become reintroduced to, and knowing, for instance, Mickey Rourke was fantastic in The Wrestler, Mickey was sort of welcomed back to the community for the powerful performance that he gave. Darren's a question or a doubt, who offers up no easy answers to the questions he asks about the human condition, or he asks his audience to. And, I think that's, we see those themes through many of the films that he's made, if not all of them. Black Swan and The Wrestler. Interesting that I think that those films are, among many themes, about giving a performance. It's the height of a ballerina's career, the return of a man to the ring. This is not Charlie's performance per se, but it isn't a performance that he's giving, but he is in the fight of his life when we need him. And I know that's all source material that Darren relishes and has the high standards of storytelling, as well he should, for everyone in all departments involved for the films he makes, to give him what he needs because he knows what he wants, which is good, and challenge us as creatives and also as an audience.
This started as a play by Samuel Hunter. You weren't familiar with the play at the time that Darren approached you, were you?
Correct, I was not, no. But I absolutely educated myself. I only knew that the word on the street was Darren's going to make a movie, so your antenna automatically goes up. I was invited to meet him, and he was a gentleman, I will admit to a small measure of creative intimidation to sit down with Darren. And he was straightforward about the challenge he had as a director and a filmmaker, which was to create this character, well, from the inside out is what the material would do, but also practically from the outside in. And that meant, what does Charlie look like? How is that achieved? He shared with me that he looked for actors for a long time, some who were closer to the body type that Charlie inhabited. And for practical reasons, he needed to find a performer who could wear the apparatus that it would take to create him with prosthetic makeup. Just in the same way that any actor would approach a role that asked of them to create, I don't know, say a creature or an alien or some other fantastic character. So he told me he collaborates with Adrian Moreau, who is a makeup artist extraordinaire. And I know this is the whale, but just to give you an idea of what Adrian's capable of, there's a picture coming up called Megan. That doll is Adrian's also.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Yeah.
He's good. Yeah. So I felt in good hands for that reason, and the makeup itself was a product, interestingly, of what we all had to live with, which was the existential crisis of COVID. A normal process for putting an actor in. All of that prosthetic would be to mold the actor by pouring goop on the face, creating a mold from that, casting appliances. But we didn't have access to one another. So it had to be done in a way virtually, which meant Jeremy, our producer, came and found me in the driveway with an iPad, and he scanned me as he walked around. And the dog got in the shot and screwed it up. And that information went to Adrian, who was in Montreal. He created Charlie as a virtual model in a 3D virtual model. And the technology that went into creating this is by therefore printing the positive, or the negative rather, that you would create the positives from. And that skips a step in the prosthetic process where normally there's compound sculpting that's done by hand, which is an art itself clearly, but that meant that Adrian, Megan Morris, could have absolute control and dominion over the minutiae of Charlie's body, down to the size and placement of pores and little anomalies on the skin and textures, and along with more control methods of hand punching individual hairs to the body, even on the knuckles of the arms that Charlie would wear, I would wear as Charlie. And for that, we were able to have consistency with who he was over the practical 30 whatever days it was that we shot this, and he could also chart the progression we see Charlie go through in the 5 days, Monday to Friday, that he has as his health compromises. But the process, 4 hours in the chair in the morning, an hour to get out of it, cry me a river. Adrian was there an hour before me, an hour after me. So, needless to say, we became good friends. Enough about makeup. Who wants to talk?
I would also think that for you, as an actor, you are wearing this suit, basically, on the set that must make, not only you feel, what it could be like in a certain way, but also it limits what you can do. I mean, as an actor, you have your toolkit, and your movements are not as easy.
All of that is helpful given Charlie's clear mobility issues. He needs a walker to get from point A to B, the 20 or so steps to his bed, or the restroom. His home base is moored in his couch, which is almost like, think of it as a boat in and of itself, in the sea of his little 2-bedroom apartment. These 4 other characters who come to visit him in search of their own salvation, in a way. All of that was very helpful to play the role. I mean, I had an appreciation absolutely for what it means to artificially be encumbered by the weight that affects a human body, and the resulting issues with knees and center of gravity, and all of that helped me very much to create who he was as authentically as I possibly could. Well, at my own volition, with as much dignity as I possibly could too, because we've seen this character in films many times before, iterations of it, and up until now, I'm pretty safe, I can say, this makeup hasn't had the authenticity and result of physics, gravity, in a way that we've seen in broad comedies that really are just playing for a one-note joke, or, I don't know, just some sort of salacious angle, or to vilify a character or make a statement about them that they could otherwise do through acting and writing. And I know that for my part, I've always felt that was kind of unfair, and then everything that we did not want to do. Because without Charlie's body, there's no movie at all. And this is not a CGI creation, with the exception of maybe there being a little curative on a seam, or perhaps if fabric was in its own movie one morning, just to later calm it down. So our finely tuned eye and brain that we all have now in this age of digital, where we can pick out the most imperceptible little perceived flaw in something that's digital and go, aha, you're trying to fool me. But that's not happening here because it's not digital. It's analog handcrafting.
Charlie is a man who is, yes, struggling with severe obesity. Charlie is also a man who is struggling with deep guilt and a huge sense of loss. And those aren't things that are created, on an iPad. Those are things that come from you. So what are the challenges there of finding basically Charlie's soul?
Charlie lives with the realization that he has ignored his regrets for too long, and clearly his time is brief. And he finally owns at the moment when he looks up straight up what his condition is on his computer, I think the third day, and realizes he better make good on reaching out to his daughter, or there's no hope for salvation for him. And his redemption is really what's of paramount importance to him. I felt with the material when I first read it that in some ways I could identify with him. I knew right away that I was stirred emotionally by this story. And I also knew that I kind of felt like I know this guy, or I wanted to know him. I wanted to be his friend. I think I've always had an affinity for sort of the oddballs or the outcasts or the outliers as the people who I gravitate towards the most. And a man trapped in his apartment in the relative dark of anywhere, Idaho, and his quest for redemption is a big story in a small room, and one that I would imagine is played out in relative obscurity all over the country, if not the world, too. And I wanted to know what happens in that little room. And Darren's take was to go inside and to tell his story with dignity.
You talk about playing out in a small room, and basically you for most of the movie you're not just in one room, you're in one spot in that room. I think back, and I remember back long ago, I spent quite a few days on the set of Misery, the movie with James Caan and Kathy Bates, and James Caan spent most of that movie in a bed, and it drove him nuts. He was so stir crazy, and every break he would run out and play basketball, and he just couldn't.
Yeah, Kathy Bates is running around with a sledgehammer. That playing your head a little bit.
Okay, granted. But for you, is it difficult that you are doing all your work in one spot?
Well, that was home base for Charlie. Really, the difficulty was, I guess I'd say, it was just academic. I needed to get from the 70s or so steps from the chair in the shop in the makeup room to the set. And so for that, because I was encumbered by all of this apparatus, that I needed to be wheeled there by a really strong guy called Ben, and 4 or 5 other people who were my pit crew to keep me hydrated and change out the ice bags that had the tubes running up my back. Were built into the thing, there was a secret door, and very high tech. And I melted a lot of ice, like 7 or 8 bags a day last night, something like that. It's kind of funny to me. I don't know why my body melted 8 bags of ice. Don't often say that. Look, those are challenges, and I happen to relish in those. I'm a glutton or something. I love my job and everything that goes into it. But if it's a story that's told from one spot, that's fine. Because let's not forget that Sam Hunter's screenplay is adapted from his own stage production, which he is a MacArthur Genius Fellowship winner. His play, The Whale, has run countless of hundreds of productions in the last 10, 12 years. He's received many, many awards for his work, and it's a piece that's presentational, because it's a stage, it's a theatrical production, first and foremost, which is where Darren actually saw the material, almost on a whim. And as he tells it, he immediately called Sam to option it, and started the process. I think it took 10 years for him to bring it to the screen here.
Wow.
We're lately hearing details of steps along those 10 years, like Tom Ford was going to direct it with James Corden, or George Clooney was interested, but he wanted an actor the size of the character. I mean, were you privy to any of?
No. I mean, films always go through many, many iterations in their development processes. So I know that I came to it in January of 2020. And in March of 2020, things kind of shut down for a while for all of us. As you may recall, we all put on our comfortable pants. And this project was actually, under threat that we all were of not being realized for very obvious reasons, that we couldn't get back to work safely until we could. That unions worked together, the production company, everything made sure that we could put the protocols in place and be very careful with one another. No one got sick. This was all pre-vaccine, luckily. And when I see this film, when I talk to people about this film, I noticed that there's almost like there's a secret filter or layer or ingredient that goes into how this movie plays. And I think it has something to do with that. When we made it, it's 5 characters in one room on the soundstage in Newburgh, New York, former motorcycle museum, high school. And we were really careful with one another. We were so much more devoted to one another's safety and concern that I think it shows on the screen somehow, in a way that I don't know if you could capture that. And I'm hopeful that maybe in our lives, next 10, 20 years as it goes, we'll look back at the period of filmmaking when films were made in the time of COVID and appreciate what that secret ingredient was that went into making it. It's being good to make medicine out of poison. Anyway, you were saying?
I mean, I've talked to lots of people who said, we had to delay production or we had to shut down, and that turned out to be a blessing because I was able to go back and look at this or do that. I mean, did you make...
I was able to go make a movie with Darren Aronofsky. Well, it gave me a lot of time to prepare for this. I was able to sit in the room above my garage and do everything I could to get as completely off book as possible, to get these lines hammered into my muscle memory, because I knew that once I was in Charlie's body, I wouldn't have the luxury of hiding sides behind the chair and acting. I had to own it. Everybody had to own it, and it worked because it was theatrical too. So you can. We rehearsed for, get this, 3 whole weeks. A24 gave us 3 weeks to rehearse this. That's unheard of. I mean, imagine that, rehearsing your work before you bring it to the stage to shoot it. But we were like an off-Broadway company in our approach, which was on day 1 with an empty room, standby furniture, not unlike this, taped out 1-to-1 floor. Darren disallowed us from stepping through the tape because that would be a wall, and you can't walk through a wall, so we had to use the front door, go in and out. So we observed these theatrical conceits and made all of our mistakes and our discoveries early on before we came to the build, and did it for real, memorialized it.
So, during the shooting, I mean, were there particular scenes, particular sequences that you found the most challenging?
Sure. I guess my Kilimanjaro was the ending. It had nothing to do with any of the apparatus or whatever I was wearing. It was the emotional reality of it. Charlie's great white whale is to redeem himself in the eyes of his daughter, if he can. And everything leads to the last breathless 5 moments, or five or so minutes in this movie. We shot mostly chronologically, which was good. And by the 8th day or so, I'll admit I was feeling a little fatigued, and all right, I'm lying, I was gassed out. Like all pedal, no gas. But I knew the scene, Sadie knew the scene forwards and backwards. Time out, Sadie saying, "Woo!" I had a front row seat to watch her win the game ball every day.
Yeah.
Every
Yeah.
day. I would get lost in her jewel green eyes and shrink under the focus of that volcanic rage she plays with, which is absolutely glorious.
Yeah.
Never falling into the trope of an angsty teenager. Never. And her approach to this was, Ellie is a very sad little girl with obvious good cause, and she's angry with her father, and understandably so. And she has a lot to say, and she also happens to be brilliant, and she's also untapped talent, which is what Charlie sees in her. He's an optimist, yes, but he's a positive person, yes, probably a product of it being denigrated and slapped down all his life, and otherwise just retreat on himself and collapse. Or else stand up to it and own who he is and bring out the good in others. He's an educator, he's a teacher, that's what he does, he inspires. And in her, he sees magnificence in the future. She's almost gonna realize that for herself, but she's young, she's a kid. She's brilliant, for sure. She's the next Joyce Carol Oates or something,
Yeah.
When he realizes that she's written a haiku spontaneously. It's brilliant writing for my eye. And Sadie's fantastic. While we're handing out the flowers here, we talk about Hog Child. Bask in her glory.
Yeah.
She is able, that face, oh my God, she has an ability to convey more and speak more than the dialogue she utters. And as I said, with respect to Sam, but she can do that in between the lines. She speaks volumes in the pauses and the silences. I mean, there could be a whole movie about that character alone.
Absolutely.
There should be.
Absolutely.
And when she takes the missionary out behind the woodshed, oh boy, everybody, you're gonna be in trouble. I mean, do you see the way that kid scrammed out of there? Getting was good. But she let him know, in no uncertain terms, what the score was. And that's home. She's got that titanium backbone, nobody's fool. She speaks the truth. She's infinitely human. She's conflicted. She's angry with Charlie. She loves Charlie. It's her brother's partner, last connection that she has to her late brother. And in happier times, we get the feeling from Hong's performance that these two were spectacular championship good friends. They were cleaned up on Pictionary night, together. It would have been fun to be there. But when we're meeting everyone, it's at the tail end of that experience of their lives. Ty Simpkins, also fantastic. I watched him as a young actor earn his stripes on this movie. He really did. I almost watched him grow up. Well, I did, a little bit in that month, and that's exciting for me, an old guy like me to watch, like somebody coming up, earning his right.
And Samantha Morton.
And Sam Morton.
2 movies this year, but she comes in for one scene and destroys.
And she steals the damn movie. Thanks very much. Good night. That's Sam. We had her for 3 days or something like that. Again, COVID. She was in the UK. We rehearsed with Zoom screens in the hall. She arrived fully formed with a history that went back there 35, 40 years of their relationship. And I think there's something about Sam that it's like there's a layer that she just has either shed or is removed when she performs and when she does her work, because everything is so authentic, and she has to have some sort of creative muscle, actor engine in her that runs on truth, and that's all that she can speak and convey when she gives her performance. And hers is everyone has their tragedy in their own way. They're all in search of love and redemption. She laments and mourns for what could have been between she and Charlie that never was, and the anger she feels for being so disappointed, and the anger that she still loves him, and the anger that it's all going to end so abruptly. Everyone is flawed in this movie, which I appreciate for how infinitely human it is. And let's not forget that Charlie does have his darker side to him, too. He has misstepped, he has made mistakes. He's taking ownership for them, but that doesn't mean there still hasn't been damage that's been done.
Now, a while back, you started to talk about how leading up to that final scene, you were just out of gas.
Yeah, and then I went
got
on word
sidetracked.
salad land, and you brought me home. Okay, so what I'm going to say, look, I was gassed out. I didn't know what to do. And I was trying to, we shot Sadie's side. She's like brilliant because she's Sadie. And then for some reason we needed to go to the door. I can't remember what it was, but Darren said, okay, look, we're going to turn around and come back to you later on this afternoon for lighting reason or something like that. I was like, okay, sure. And then when he did my side, it's like I was playing all the right notes, but they weren't really, it wasn't jazz. It wasn't really landing, and it would have been a performance that I think was passable, maybe one that, I could get away with in something else, but it wasn't good enough. It wasn't what it should have had been, and Darren said, all right, take 5. I thought, oh, that's it, I'm fired, I suck. My career is over. And he said, he's like, you okay? I'm like, yeah, I'll get it together. And he cleared everyone out, and he gave me a kind bar. I guess I needed it. And I had a little talk with myself, like, all right, suck it up, Fraser, get it together. Came back, shot scene again. Nope, not there. So we broke for lunch, and he said, no, we retreat. It's the right thing to do. I thought, okay, well, it's been fun. And he came to me a little on later, and he said, look, you peaked. What? He said, you peaked. It happens to actors. And he named like 3-4 other people, Ellen Burstyn, these were. It just happens. It's like a job hazard or something in his eyes. And he said, we'll come back to it tomorrow, And I was choked up, and I told him, and this is true, there's a director has never been this kind to me before. He said, I'm not being kind, I'm protecting the movie and I'm protecting your performance. And that was sobering to me. But I didn't let it go to my head in a sort of denigrating way that night. And we came back the next day, we shot the scene, and what you saw was what you got. So we got through.
Yeah.
remember this is Darren Aronofsky who said that were he not a director, he would have been a baseball umpire, because the guy sees everything. Like, he knows the call, he's at home plate, heard him. He said that, look, it happens, and it's a part of the process.
Well, I mean, obviously, the ending is simultaneously so heartbreaking and so glorious. But can we back all the way up to the other end of the movie? Because it opens with, basically, you masturbating your way through a heart attack. Which is a hell of a way to start a movie.
Well, people normally don't stop unless they see a stop sign. And Charlie's infinitely human. Everybody has alone time. And I think it automatically sets up the circumstances and the stakes of who this guy is. He lives alone. He's gay. He's in very poor health. This is dire. He's having a cardiac event. My son, coincidence, a missionary walks in the door. I mean, it sounds like a Monty Python joke. So. Funny, I just ran into Eric Idle at the hotel. So I can't wait to ask him what the punchline is. It's a job, what can I say?
I mean, obviously, in recent years, there have been increased sensitivity, and rightfully so, about telling stories of underrepresented groups and who has the right to tell those stories. So, I mean, were there things that you did to make sure that you were approaching this with, enough sensitivity and respect and,
Sure. Look, I can tell you about the time that I spent working with the Obesity Action Coalition, who are an advocacy group who support tens of thousands of members who need one another and they need help with regard to issues surrounding obesity and obesity-related conditions and diseases, whether it's emotional, mental health, medical support referrals for those who struggle with eating disorders, who await insurance approval for a bariatric procedure, something medical that could save your life, but they're stuck in this limbo of frustration when doctors who, and that's been proven, have certain bias against people who carry more weight on their bodies very often, can't be as helpful as they should be. I made sure that I spoke to people who lived this or their family members, those who counseled them. Dr. Rachel Goldman was very helpful. And through the testimonials that they gave me, which very often started when they were very small to their adult lives, I was saddened and really well informed in a helpful way to learn that very often the root cause of weight bias begins with children. It's so sad to think that there's an adult or a parent or a bully or other kids themselves who speak in a way that's demeaning to a child, and it stays with them. And it puts in place a cycle that repeats and repeats, and it manifests itself in all sorts of other behaviors. And this is where people can find themselves as a result of just, in brief, let's be kind to one another, because there are serious health concerns that can result if we're not. So that's something I can identify. I've been on the receiving end of plenty of scorn and derision in my lifetime for my own body type. 25 years ago, oh my God, I'm old, I was running around in a loincloth. And that's okay, because that was the job. I was my wardrobe, apart from a tea towel, leopard print on it, you know. But as eye-opening and attention-getting as that body type is, there's another side to it too. I was scrutinized endlessly. Now 20 whatever years later, so not long. That gets held up as a standard compared to who I am now, or I was at the time we made this film. And those comparisons can be made, and you know, whether it's me or anyone else, it seems like it's kind of unfair. But I do know that I can identify with having the lived experience of knowing what it feels like to be made to feel less than who you are by virtue of the fact that by virtue of how you present in the world. And insofar as the issue of representation goes, and I thought about this a lot, the best that I could do to play Charlie was to meet the guy halfway, or as close to him as I could, and use the costuming and makeup to tell the other half of his story with who he was. So the short answer is it was a collaboration.
Well, I think we'll open it up to the audience, but first I want to ask one more. At this point, I mean, you have gotten so much attention over, you know, for this performance, and absolutely rightly so. Has it changed where you want to go from here? Has it changed? Are you getting? You're certainly getting more attention. Are there offers?
Oh no, I've never been more famous and more unsalaried at the same time. I'm in the book. This is LA.
So you're looking around. You're available now.
Correct.